So I'm assuming you've all interacted with a 7-year-old at some point in your crazy lives, right? No? Oh, dang it, my talk's ruined. I have 5 siblings. They're all younger than me. It drives me insane. But one of the benefits of having such a big family is that sometimes you can just go in the kitchen and there'll be someone that you can talk to. I guess there's no real official name for them, but you could call them like TEDxKitchenTalks. I thought that was gonna be funnier. Oh man. But I have this younger sibling. He's the youngest out of all of them. His name's Javis. He reminds me of a funner version of my younger self sometimes. He's chumpy, he's quirky, and he loves to scream when he's playing these video games. He drives my mom insane. And one day, when I was giving Javis when I was talking to Javis in the kitchen, I was trying to tell him about breakdancing. As an older sibling, it's one of the most satisfying things to see your younger siblings following you in your footsteps. In my case, I wanted to see him follow in my 2 steps. But as I was telling him about breakdancing, he began to do what every annoying 7-year-old does. He started asking me, "Why do you breakdance?" And just kept asking me so many why questions. And as our conversation went on, a question began to form in my own head. Why don't older kids and adults ask as many questions as Jabez? Could it be that as we get older, we know so much that we lose the need to ask questions? It can't be. There's only so much that the human brain can hold or remember. In fact, I can't even remember what was on my last AP Spanish test. My opinion on the decrease in curiosity as a function of age is that as people get older, other people become less lenient. They'll begin judging you for asking stupid questions, and as a result, we learn to keep our mouths shut. We've adapted to a culture where asking questions can make you seem incompetent, making us overly self-conscious about what we ask. There's another thing that begins to happen to us as we get older, which isn't as immediately obvious. When we're younger, we're patted on the back and cheered on for doing simple things like washing our hands and writing our names correctly. We feel super. But as we get older, we begin to realize that other people are also kind of super. They too can wash their hands and write their names correctly. And just as Syndrome in the movie The Incredibles says, when everyone's super, no one will be. In fact, not only do we realize that other people are super, we realize that they're better than us. Not only can they wash their hands and write their names correctly, they can write their names in cursive. They do better than us in exams. They do better than us in sports. And they're cheered on for doing the amazing features that we just can't. And when we stop, and when we think about why we're not as good as them, what's the easiest conclusion for our incurious minds to come to? Maybe we're just dumb. Maybe they're just better than us. We forget about the possibility that maybe we have a hand in our own failures. We don't want to imagine that, well, maybe the other kid spends hours practicing the art of writing his name. We don't want to imagine that the other basketball player spends more time practicing his form while we're trying to prove to everyone that shooting like this is really the way to go. We don't want to imagine that the brilliant student that sits in the front of our math class has just a stronger foundation in math that could possibly just take us a few days or weeks to catch up to. Understandably, it's difficult to think about the things that we do wrong. No one, myself included, wants to imagine that this child that's been cheered on since birth, might have made a mistake. We want to assume that we've just been dealt a bad hand of cards and that there's nothing that we can do about it. Let's drop this idea. Let's change the rules. Let's swap out our bad hand of cards for a good one. That was not impressive, I'm sorry. We can do this by asking ourselves why we fail to reach our goals and looking for the root cause of our problems, just like engineers. Why are we so bad at math? Maybe we just don't do the homework. Why don't we do the homework? We don't understand the concepts. Why don't we understand the concepts? We don't understand the fundamental ideas that could allow us to understand the bigger ideas. Though asking yourself why continually may not seem like the funnest path towards success, sometimes, as Grandma Willow in the movie Pocahontas says to Captain John Smith, sometimes the right path is not the easiest one. For one example, in some classes, particularly STEM classes, there's a certain way of thinking that can bring certain students to the top of their class. Let's take a student, Caleb Blake, for example. If you've ever had a class with Caleb, you'd hate him. He's a student that's always asking all the questions. He's a student that, if you thought about what his grades could potentially be, you'd probably imagine that they're below everyone else. But they're not. In fact, he scores higher than me on exams. He scores higher than everyone else on his exams. And it's frustrating. It's like one of those advertisements that you see online. Teachers hate him. Learn this kid's shocking $5 secret to getting perfect grades. What's Caleb's secret to getting perfect grades? He's not afraid to ask the teachers about the concepts. He's not afraid to ask why certain things are the way that they are. He still has his curiosity. And this is something that we should all strive to have in our class as we walk throughout life. There's one final group of people that I'd like to address. Lying at the end of the spectrum are the students that are academically successful or labeled as such. But if you talk to these students and really get to know them, you'll find that many of them are actually very unhappy. You'll find that a lot of them are taking on too many AP classes. They're in too many clubs. They're making way more commitments than they can handle. Raise your hand if you feel personally attacked right now. Thank God I'm not alone. In my junior and senior years, I took on way too many classes than I could handle. And it just makes sense to us. Hard work equals success, and success is good, right? But there's a point at which we put in too much work. We are the students that have our minds so set on the future that we forget to worry about ourselves in the present. We feel so strongly that we need to get into the top colleges and get the highest grades that we miss out on hours of sleep, days spent with our friends, nights, and years of growth. Finally, only on the night before our biology test, at 4 in the morning, as we're texting someone who's facing the same struggles as us, when the world pushes us to our limits, when we feel like we're already in so deep that it'd be pointless to switch lanes, only then do we ask ourselves, why? Only then do we ask ourselves why we ruin ourselves. For the overworked students in the crowd, to take a step back from academics, to dedicate yourselves more to the enjoyment of your short lives may seem like a difficult task. We've been so committed to school for all of our lives that it seems like moving it to second priority may feel like we're tossing aside our dreams and aspirations. It may feel like we're letting down the younger version of ourselves that hung up that MIT poster on their wall, or the younger version of ourselves that was such a UC Berkeley fanboy. Oh my God. But maybe after asking ourselves why we work so hard, we find that our dreams aren't to be the best engineer, the best doctor, the best student, as we constantly tell ourselves and the people that we long to impress. Maybe all our hearts want is to end up living happy, content lives. I've come across many brilliant people at CAMS. So many of them don't know how smart they are or could be. I believe that every student, especially at CAMS, has the potential to do things as great as their teachers, their idols, things as great as their favorite Disney characters. But in order for us to do things as great as them, we must first take a step back to be the annoying 7-year-old child that's always asking why. Thank you.